All right, let's get back to the story. Then a leaked audio recording has brought some tension in the Cape Town taxi industry and, of course, with the city for impounding of taxis. Just this last 60 days alone, close to 1,200 vehicles would have been impounded, some 500 vehicles in 10 days. The Taxi Association's chair in the Western Cape, Mandla Hermanus, is joining me on the line now. Mr. Hermanus, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. I'm saying, what do you particularly find wrong with the city having enforcement targets?
What is happening with enforcement targets? Then it means taxis are stopped with the intention to impound, not because they've done anything wrong on the roads, but traffic officers are under pressure to find something wrong with the taxi so that they can meet their targets. And we are saying this is not the approach that the city should be taking if we are looking at issues of road safety, changing the behavior of the drivers on the roads. You can't just simply have a blanket approach that says if we impound as many as we can, then the behavior will change. This is, for us, this is a money-making scheme, because if you look at 1,000 taxis impounded in 1 month, that's close to 5 million rand that the city will bring in, because each vehicle, at the very least, has to pay a minimum of 5,000 rand to be released, and this amount goes up. Others are paying 15,000 rand at a time to be released if it's a second or third offense for which the vehicle has been impounded. And we are saying this approach is not correct. It can't be that you would shut down, because each individual minibus taxi, it's a business that supports families. So imagine shutting down 1,000 individual businesses in 1 month. That can't be good for the economy. That can't be good for the operators and the people who depend on these vehicles for their livelihood.
Yeah. How at variance is this particular approach with the agreement that you would have reached? Now, I remember I did speak to you sometime last year, around August, after that 3-day imbizo with the city, where you would have reached some kind of an agreement or a systematic way in which you're going to work through the enforcement and consequences for each of the operating license conditions. Is this approach at variance with that?
Look, the city is very vindictive as far as minibus taxi operators are concerned, because what the city does, community safety, they divorce themselves from the other departments that are responsible for ensuring that our vehicles have these operating licenses. We undertook a program that started around 2018 when rail failed dismally, and as a consequence, minibus taxis now were providing services to routes that they did not have operating licenses for. And up until now, it was only on the 4th of October that a government gazette was issued detailing all these routes that now our operators are operating, which have been operating since 2018. What that means is that it's only now that the process for legalizing those routes is kicking off.
Yeah.
Now, what community safety does is to target those specific areas where they know that the operating licenses are not there yet, because the process, is still continuing. So we might see operating licenses probably early next year. And we've had a similar instance with another industrial zone called Brackengate, where it took 8 years for that area to be given operating licenses. Yeah. And what the law enforcement side of the city of Cape Town does is to target those specific areas where they know there are no operating licenses, because the process to issue those operating licenses takes forever.
Are you saying a majority of the 1,200 impounded vehicles, at least in the last 60 days, would have been impounded, and what is common amongst them was that they didn't have operating licenses purely due to the fact that the taxi operations have not legalized these new routes?
Yes, it's not just vehicles without operating licenses, because sometimes what we usually do on these routes, some associations will allocate vehicles that already have operating licenses, because if your vehicle already has an operating license, at least the fine, the impoundment fee, is lesser than if the vehicle does not have an operating license at all. So there will be two categories of impoundments. There will be vehicles that do not have operating licenses at all, and then there will still be vehicles with operating licenses, but because the route that they are on at that particular moment or the street that they are on is not on the operating licenses that they currently have. So it's our way of ensuring that at least we don't lose so much money when we allocate vehicles that have operating licenses to those new areas that we have been operating since 2018.
Yeah.
So those are the vehicles that are targeted. And the city is aware of this, and we have raised these things through the minibus taxi task team to say, surely there's something that the city and the province can do when they recognize that Area B is going to be allocated X number of operating licenses. But that process is going to take long. But currently, there are people who must be moved, who must be transported to and fro that particular area. And we have already identified which associations will receive these operating licenses.
Right. What
What is stopping the city and the province from granting a temporary license to those associations? Because that has already been determined that Association A travels from point A to point B will get X number of operating licenses. What's stopping government from issuing a temporary operating permit to those associations so that they don't find themselves operating outside of the law?
Yeah.
But they don't want to do that.
So there's some complexity of work there that still needs to be done. But at a more simple level, the city says, well, the residents are complaining about taxi driver behavior, and so law enforcement agencies have got to respond and address that contravention of the law. They're not necessarily talking about these issues that you're raising of operating licenses.
Look, they are being disingenuous when they say that, and we know always, JP, that's what he always says, I'm receiving complaints, therefore I'm acting as a response to those complaints. But when they act, if you are receiving complaints of reckless driving or dangerous driving, then we should be seeing fines being issued to those drivers. And in some instances where there's reckless and dangerous driving, then you would see drivers being arrested. But that is not what is happening. And when they stop these vehicles, they don't stop a vehicle because it has done something or it has driven recklessly. Because it's a taxi, then it must be stopped, and then a target, is put up to say, on every day you must bring in X number of vehicles. That has got absolutely nothing to do with the complaints that the city claims it receives on a daily basis from the public. And in any event, minibus taxis are an identifiable group. It's unlike, your normal private vehicles. It's not easy for people to keep complaining about a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, but it's easy to complain about a minibus taxi because minibus taxis, naturally, they stand out. So it's easy to get those kinds of complaints to say taxis are misbehaving. But if you were to look, because even that has to be interrogated, if you were to look at the statistics, who are responsible for the highest number of road fatalities? Who is responsible for the highest number of accidents on our roads? Those statistics will tell you actually, it's not the minibus taxi industry that is responsible for most road fatalities and accidents on our roads.
Yeah. But are you not advocating then your side for a more constructive approach of modifying driver behavior, suggesting that drivers need to go to driver training and also suggesting universal taxi branding? And I look at those recommendations, they don't include what you are raising now around the suggestion of temporary operating licenses.
We've raised all these issues because a temporal operating license, it's a stopgap measure. But when we look at these things holistically, then we have to talk, because we have to be honest with ourselves also as taxi operators to say the way our taxis drive on the roads, it has to change. And so using technology, we are saying the government must support us. We want in the Western Cape to set up control rooms at our provincial office where we'll have a bird's eye view of all our operations using technology. I mean, we are in a partnership now with the Cape Chamber of Commerce. MTN and Vodacom are part of that partnership. We are going to issue a media release by tomorrow in terms of that, where these private companies are saying, let's work with the minibus taxi industry and see if we can get this to materialize. And we are saying all we would expect from the city and the provinces to come on board, assist us, because we have a common goal, that of changing the behavior of our drivers. But they are taking a negative approach that says, first of all, we must go out, because what JP does is to go out and cultivate a negative perception about the minibus taxi industry. And linked to that is also because we had the minibus taxi task team. Through that process, we reviewed the conditions that were attached to our operating licenses. And then what we had always said, that those conditions were not in line with the National Land Transport Act. So the review process resulted in those conditions being amended so that they were in line with the NLTA. But now what the city has done now is undergoing a process of developing municipal bylaws to bring back everything that we removed from our operating licenses through the minibus taxi task team. So actually the city has said it publicly that now what they want to do actually is to circumvent national legislation so that they can add more things for which our vehicles should be impounded for, even if they are not on the NLTA, using the bylaws. So also what they are doing now, and the statements that JP Smith always puts out on social media, is to actually cultivate this negative perception amongst the residents of the Western Cape, so that when they go on the public participation process for these bylaws, there's already a captured market that will support what they want to implement.
That's Mandla Hermanus. He's the chairperson of Santaco in the Western Cape there on that development. Much appreciated. Thank you for your time. Right, In Focus continues after the break. Stay with us.